Hello. Question. Do you believe in angels? I do. There was an angel that came into my life in the 4th grade. Out of all the school I ever went to, from kindergarten all the way through college and several professional degrees, I remember Mrs. Wright above them all. Mrs. Wright was like a typical grandmother. Gray hair, she had those glasses that kind of had a little flair to them, and she was as kind as they came. And the beautiful part is, she made me the keeper of the encyclopedias. Now that was huge for me. 1962, my mother had bought the entire set of Encyclopedia Britannicas, all 26 versions. And as a child, at 1962, 6 years old, that was like the internet to me, because it opened the whole world. We didn't even have television back then. And to me, to go dig in those encyclopedias was heavenly. My gift that I have been given through my Creator is curiosity, and so to go into those encyclopedias and hunt and look and see pictures and read about Africa and all kinds of stuff. I was this little boy that when I found something, I would go, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," and I would go to my dad, "Dad, dad," and yet my dad, when I would go to explain something, I mean, your little boy is all excited about something you learn, and my dad, being very prideful, would say, "Shut up." What? You're not interested in what I have to say? Aren't I important to you, Dad? And then when Dad's friends would come over to the house and I would, be jabbering, I was so excited to share, Dad would call me names. He would call me rubber lips and motor mouth, and I remember that, and I learned to just shut up. Mrs. Wright recognized that when the encyclopedias in that classroom, I was the exact same little child in there, and so she made me the keeper of the encyclopedias. And yet when I got my last report card, the last day of school, she inserted a note and a silver certificate for $1. For those that don't know what that is, if I took that silver certificate down to the Federal Treasury, they would have to give me silver in return. And I got that for having perfect attendance, and yet Mrs. Wright wrote a note in there. And I think this may be why I remember Mrs. Wright. And the note read something like this: "Mrs. Lantz, it was so great," writing it to my mom, "to have Michael in the classroom. He was such a joy in there, and unfortunately, I got to give him a C in citizenship because he talked always. We moved him around, or she said, I moved him around to every seat in that classroom throughout the year in the hope that he would be quiet for a little while because he made friends with everybody." And reflecting back over that, Mrs. Wright was an angel. Mrs. Wright didn't move me to shut me up. Mrs. Wright moved me to open up other children, because I would go and blabber about the encyclopedias and excited, and every time Mrs. Wright asked a question, I was the first one to raise my hand. I'm still that way. In church, when they ask questions, I raise my hand. In certain other situations where I'm always raising my hand, and I think she put me by other children to let my enthusiasm rub off on them, and she just had to give me a C because I was always. Yet Mrs. Wright never shamed me, ever. She never called me names, she never yelled at me. And out of all of the teachers I ever had, I honor Mrs. Wright because she allowed me to be who I was. She brought out the best in me. What a great message. The next angel in my life, Coach Lloyd Booth, and his assistant coach, Lynn Hadfield. My sophomore year, I got moved up to varsity. Man, that's great for a sophomore. I've been playing JV all year, and our varsity team was like all juniors and one senior, and then they moved me up, and I got to play, and I actually got enough quarters that I lettered that year. And I remember my first day of practice. We played in that year, 1973, with the luau, that would be 1972, with the luau cinder rule, where you couldn't dump. And I'm doing these layups, and I miss a layup just in warm-ups, kind of get down on myself, and Lynn Hatfield pulled me aside, and he didn't chew me out for missing the layup. He said, Mike, the next one in, I want you to go dunk it. Wow, really, coach? So I went and slam dunked. Everyone goes, whoa. See, Lynn Hatfield brought out the best of me. Well, we were one in and out shot from Alan Holder away that year from going to state. We knew that the next year when all these juniors would be seniors and I would be a junior, we would have a team. In fact, in that year, in the beginning of practice and at the end of practice, when we all got together, put our hands in there, what we would yell breaking out was, take state, something like that. Well, our first 2 games of the season were down in California. We played, I don't remember the first game, but the second game was against Downey, California. We lost. Was the only loss we had that year. We won 25 games after that and took state. And after that game, we were all dejected, of course. Didn't play very well, and coach told everyone to go to your rooms after dinner and stay in your rooms the rest of the night. I mean, obviously he didn't want us out gallivanting. Well, I got paired with my friend Ricky Bartlett. Ricky was a free spirit, fun to be around, a good athlete, probably one of the best baseball pitchers Rancho ever had. He pitched us to a state championship our senior year. And Ricky's girlfriend, Carmelita, was a cheerleader. And they were staying in our hotel. And Ricky had this harebrained idea. He says, Mike, I want to go visit Carmelita. I said, Ricky, we can't do that. And Ricky says, I'm going to go. And will you tell anybody? I go, no, but I'm staying in the room. So Ricky leaves. And Ricky comes back, I don't know, half hour later. I don't remember the time frame. And, you know, he's all gibbering, man, I got to see Carmelita and got to see all the other cheerleaders and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, a knock on the door, bam, bam, bam. And you knew it was a Coach Booth knock. It had that ring to it. And Ricky scared to death because he knew Coach Booth was coming in, probably knew that Ricky had broke rules. And Ricky hides behind the bed, says, Mike, don't tell Coach that I'm here. And well, I mean, what am I going to do? I open the door, and Coach says, where's Ricky? And I says, Coach, he's not here. Lie number 1. And he said, well, have you been in your room all night? And I says, yeah, Coach, I have. Well, where did Ricky go? I don't know, Coach. Lie number 2. Next morning, we get up, we're gonna drive back from Los Angeles to Vegas. What's that, like 4.5 hour drive? And Coach Hatfield and Booth were in their car. And they said, Ricky and Mike, you're riding with us in the back seat. Let me tell you, as a 16-year-old boy, it was chilling in the back seat of that car. And somewhere after we got going, Coach Hatfield turns to us and says, you know, you guys broke team rules and we're thinking about kicking you off the team. Oh my gosh. That was like a knife in my heart. Kick us off the team? I've lived for this day. Scared to death. They went on to talk to us about honor, about integrity, about team. And they said, that was Sunday driving home, and they said, on Monday, we're going to decide if we're going to kick you off or if we're going to punish you. Man. I prayed that whole Sunday and all day at school that we weren't kicked off the team. It's probably the only prayer I ever said in my life that was answered. We get to practice that Monday and we're still on the team. Have a normal practice, ran our wind sprints as a team, and then afterwards, Coach got all of us together. And instead of blasting us, instead of saying that Mike and Ricky are liars, we weren't liars, we were young, stupid kids. And the coach said, we're gonna allow Mike and Ricky to stay on the team. They broke team rules, but we're gonna punish them. And we're gonna run them. And we had just run a whole bunch of lines. I mean, we ran hard that year. And Coach made all of the other team members stay and cheer us on as we ran. That's leadership. Unlike my dad, who never went to a game that year. State championship, Dad never went to a game. My dad would read the paper on Saturday morning after a Friday night game, and unfortunately, I don't know where my dad got his racism from, but he'd be reading the paper and say, I saw you and those ends won last night. What, Dad? I mean, I'm saying to myself, I don't look at another player's color of his skin. They accept me. In fact, the leaders of that team were way better than I was. They accepted me, and my dad calls them in, and you don't go to any games. That was like a knife in a young boy's heart. Yet, Coach Booth, another angel, he never shamed me for the mistake I made. He never said I was a mistake, like my mother had said to me multiple times growing up. I was the third child of 3, had an older brother and sister, and I was an oops damn baby. I wasn't a planned pregnancy, and I was, like, in my mind, shunned. Mom called me a mistake, but Coach Booth didn't call me a mistake. Neither did Hatfield. They saw the potential in me, knowing that I'm gonna make mistakes, and I paid the price through those wind sprints and felt terrible with the team, and yet he had the team stay, and they cheered us on as we ran lines. Angels. That's how we treat people. That's how I've learned to treat people. I don't look for their mistakes. I don't call them names. I try, like Mrs. Wright and Lloyd and Lynn Hatfield did. They brought the best out in me. I love my angels.